Hi folks, how are you doing? Apart from the Anand Carlsen game, there was much more in the first round of the Gashimov Memorial, and the game we're gonna see today, I think it was much more interesting than the one I said, the Anand Carlsen battle. Seriously, we had very interesting and curious game being played between two young and extremely talented players. Wesley So with white pieces, coming from a difficult first US championship from him, and Gashimov with black pieces from Netherlands, both of them well established into the world's top 10 and almost hitting the 2800 ELO barrier. So extremely interesting players to see, and the game we're gonna see is very bizarre in a way, but full of logic, I think, at the same time. Okay, let's see the moves, and I will try to be clear and will make myself clear. C4 was played by Wesley So, who is playing with white pieces. G6. E4, a move that is aimed to prevent the Grunfeld, I guess. And E5 was played by Gashimov. This is a move I don't think I have seen previously. It appears to be called Adorian or Adorgian defense, not sure the correct pronunciation, named after who was a strong player of 20th century from Hungary, if I'm not mistaken. So there it goes. Black puts a pawn on the center, making it more difficult, or trying to make it difficult, the d4 natural move for white, which white certainly plays. Now knight f6. Curious position, but quite theoretical, it seems. Here d takes e5 was played. One would wonder, as I did here at the first spot, why can't white play natural looking knight c3? Well, it seems after the almost forced moves e takes, queen takes, knight c6 winning tempo, here if queen goes 8 back, after moving the bishop to either c7 or g5, really black has an excellent position with a huge lead on development, and the lack of central space with his pawns could be compensated with activity here, with his 3 minor pieces being active. So that's certainly a possibility, but it seems black doesn't have any kind of problem there. Instead, Wesley plays pawn takes e5, now knight takes on e4, bishop d3, and bishop b4 check. And okay, keep in mind this is going to be quite an original game, good example of modern chess. Here the good move and what Wesley plays is king f1. Yes sir. Let's try to see why not blocking here with any piece. For instance, if bishop to d2, well, the computer is giving like knight takes, and d6, and already the engine is liking black. I don't know, the position seems rather strange to me, but it seems that white is this pawn, for instance, is kind of shaky. If you take it, you give another tempi to black, queen takes and the bishop is under attack. So okay, it's quite a bizarre position, but I guess black is not doing bad here at all. So yeah, after bishop b4 check, just king f1 is what Wesley So played. And now the knight goes back to c5, knight to f3, and yet again this black knight is going to move, but this time with a very concrete reason, as we're gonna see. Knight to e6, controlling the very important g5 square. Well, let's try to see why is that move so important. What if you move another logical looking move like knight c6, developing a piece? Well, here comes the reason. White plays this very strong bishop g5, attacking the queen, which has no escaping square. And now the only move you can play is, fortunately we have a knight here, so you can play knight e7, but surprise surprise, a3. Where is this bishop going? And we have b4 after bishop a5. Very funnily, black position collapsed, was blown away in just a couple of moves. So This is just an example of why black should be certainly very careful here, and that's why knight e6 is a very important move here, controlling g5. I mean, it's difficult to explain how can black afford to move 4 out of 7 times in the opening with only his knight, and after a move like a3, go back with the bishop. White plays knight c3, d6, challenging white's central pawn. He takes. Yet again the bishop of black moves. Note that only 2 pieces of black have been moved so far, and guess what, after b4 this bishop moves again. As I said, in a way this is a strange and a bizarre move order, a strange game so far, but on the other hand, that's quite logical. Now the bishop is looking for a very active diagonal on g7 now that b4 has been played, so bishop back to g7 to control this great diagonal. Yes, this is modern chess, a very good example of it. Both black bishop and knight have been moving a bunch of times. White king is on f1, no pawns in the center, so yeah, old school masters, I'm sure, like Tarash or Nimzovich, would be horrified if they were able to see this game. But that's how it goes. Every time these pieces were moved, they had their logic, so why not? The position required it. Queen e2 is played here, pinning this knight. Bishop to g7, and now bishop to g5. Now that the knight is pinned and cannot take the bishop here on g5. Well, what to do with this queen, as it's not that easy to escape to a good square when, well, move the bishop again, why not? Not sure which number of move this is, 13. How many times has this bishop moved? I'm not sure, but a lot of times. And after all, to be exchanged here on f6, queen takes. But once again, this is what the position was requiring. Now it's black who is attacking c3, and the rook is hanging behind it, so it's white's turn to move a piece twice. Queen to d2, defending the knight. Finally, black castles. Finally, white develops another rook, another piece, in this case the rook. And guess what? The queen moves again. Queen to d8. I know this is looking a little bit strange. Maybe this queen d8 move wasn't that easy to explain like other moves which we saw with the bishop and the knight moving once again. Now rook d1. The rook goes to the d file, which seems more important now, where the queen is placed, and black plays a5. Well, if you're that behind in development, like in this case, you try to activate your rook in this case on the a file at any cost with moving like a5. And Wesley says, well, I can move my pawns too, and if they're on one side of the board, I don't care. Well, h4. Clearly white has to go for an attack here on the king side, as his rook on h1 is not going to be developed anymore via castling, so h4, h5 is very natural. A takes was played. Well, good for black. Now he has an active rook on the a file. After a takes, he plays knight d7. The knight is hurrying to f6, as we're gonna see, to try to defend black's position. h5 and knight f6. Here comes an interesting move by Wesley So, c5, as we're gonna see, making room for the bishop on c4 to try to look for more active diagonals here. Black plays b6. H takes was played, f takes, and now queen e3. The queen moves again, and we can see already white having a very active heavy pieces here, both the rooks and the queen. Having open files here, really exerting some pressure on black's position, which is certainly already a little bit dubious, dangerous, let's say. Here Gashimov plays a move which I don't know, I don't get. Queen e7, that's a self-pin, isn't it? And we're gonna see this knight being decisive here, decisive piece in in the fate of this game, as now this knight is pinned and all the game is going to be circling around this knight. This knight is going to be a key. Well, bishop c4 looking very natural. Now this knight is pinned twice, the poor piece cannot move, the king is behind, the queen is there, so really looking quite dangerous for black, for Gashimov, who starts taking some kind of desperate measures. He plays b takes with a nice idea. If you just take it back, which didn't happen, black plays bishop a6, forcing the exchange of this light squared bishop and relieving his position seriously, as there is no more absolute pin on the diagonal. But of course Wesley So isn't almost a 2800 rating GM for nothing, so he plays b5. He doesn't want the pawn back so far, he just wants to avoid bishop a6. The pawn will be recovered, maybe not, but it is much more important here to be very active attacking this knight, which is really in a very tragical position. Rook b8 is played. Difficult to get the idea of this move until we see the next couple of moves by black. It's an original way to try to desperately defend the position, but certainly doesn't seem quick enough. Anyway, it wasn't that easy to suggest that great moves here for black, as his position is really very sad. Rook b8 was played, rook e1, of course, more power to the e-file, more attack against the pinned knight, and black's idea, Anish's idea, was to play rook b6, defending the knight on e6 with the rook. Okay, you can't go to a6, you go to b6. But now this is allowing Wesley So to play knight a4, attacking the rook, which went to d6, and now he just takes the pawn back, adding another piece to the attack against the super pinned knight on e6, this poor piece. And that's already 4 pieces attacking this knight here. Really horrible pin there, which is absolutely decisive in this game. If there was a book to be written on games won thanks to pins, well, this would be definitely one of those games, because the pin against this knight, the double pin, a horrible pin against this knight, is going to be absolutely crushing in this game, as you can see. Well, Anish starts taking some desperate measures. He plays knight to g4, attacking the queen, but just simply queen e4. We keep the pressure, we attack the knight as well. And well, Giri starts playing some desperate moves here, trying to looking for complications, trying to mud the waters a lot, but it's not going to work too much. He sacrifices the rook and checks, the knight, then checks with the rook, king g3, and I'm not sure what was his idea, but after rook takes f3 he sacrifices almost everything. After g takes f3, Giri just resigned, giving Wesley So a very nice first round victory in this Gashimov Memorial. Quite an original and an interesting game, and I hope you liked and enjoyed this game as much as I did. Thanks for watching.